So when you're in a situation and things may seem rough, seem hard, seem challenging, and like you're just not getting anywhere, make a list of the things you're grateful for and then get really curious, because when you're curious, you're not going to feel fear. And so get curious as to what that goal is, why you want to achieve that goal. Get out and explore, take walks, do something that gives you joy. Maybe it's art, maybe it's music. Do something that gives you joy, because anything from the past that you've felt shame or guilt over, you will not feel when you're feeling joy. So that's what I would say. Just remember those three words: gratitude, curiosity, and joy.
Welcome to Dream Big with Big Dreamers, conversations for career growth, inspiration, and insight. It's time to dream big. Today's guest is Dr. Robyn Graham, founder of Robyn Graham LLC and the creator of the Purpose to Results method. She's also the host of the award-winning Robyn Graham Show. She's a speaker, author of You, Me, and Anxiety. She's on a mission to help women in leadership and their families navigate anxiety and create thriving, purposeful lives. I've been looking forward to this because anxiety affects so many of us, especially those of us dreaming big. Robyn brings both science and heart to this conversation. Robyn, I always start by asking my guests this one question. When was the first time you can remember dreaming big, and how did it shape who you are today?
That's such a great question, Donna. And honestly, I was a dreamer my whole life. Just I loved my imagination, and I spent a lot of time there. I think because I was an avid reader. But the first time I really dreamt big as far as career goals and things that I wanted to do was one of my mom's friends was a professor at a university, SIU Carbondale, actually, in Southern Illinois. And I babysat for her daughter. And I had the privilege to travel with her. And she was a nutritionist, and she was on the cusp of all of the major research when it came to artificial sweeteners. So this was a long time ago
Yeah.
in the 80s. But I got to travel with her, and I took care of her daughter while she went and did all of her meetings and all of these things. And I just thought, wow, she makes a lot of money. She wears a suit every day. Like, she seems so authoritative, but
Yeah.
yet kind in this prestige. And that was really what drove me to accomplish my goals and dreams as far as my
Yeah.
career went.
She was also mission driven too. So,
Yeah.
it's not like she was making money for money's sake, but she was out there helping people, alerting them to sucralose and all of those at the time.
Yeah. Which now I'm not so sure I am a fan of any of them just from a health perspective. But when you look back in the 80s when diabetes was on the rise, people were looking for an alternative. And,
Yeah.
she was on the cusp of all of that research to
Yeah.
find the best,
Yeah.
right? The safest. And yeah, she was an inspiration. Yeah.
So many of our listeners are high achievers and they're juggling big dreams, their careers and families. What are some practical ways we can navigate anxiety in the midst of a full life?
So important to recognize. And it's also imperative, I think, that we recognize that it's very unique for every individual and every individual family unit, right?
Yeah.
It could be that the parent is experiencing the anxiety. It could be that the child is experiencing anxiety, or multiple children.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's a lot of things we can do to regulate our nervous systems to make sure that instead of being reactionary, we're actually responding. And we're responding gracefully to keep some of those emotional tensions down. When people have anxiety, oftentimes react very dramatically, you might say,
Mhm.
and sometimes irrationally. So it's really about checking in with ourselves to see, okay, how am I feeling right now? And what might have triggered me? And how can I navigate my response so that I don't escalate a situation or a conversation? And I think oftentimes that's hard in the moment, but if we can get into a routine of practicing regulating our nervous system, doing things like breath work, journaling,
Yeah.
maybe meditating, taking walks, being exposed to nature on a regular basis, things that can really ground our nervous system in a state of regulation versus those staying in a state of dysregulation when we're in fight or flight and we're automatically going to react very negatively or inappropriately or over dramatized,
Mhm.
right?
It's so funny because when you first started speaking, I was thinking, why does it seem like there's so much more anxiety today than there was? But as you went through and you started to talk, like, we need to get away from the technology. We need to get away from these things that dysregulate us. And it started to dawn on me that maybe it really has a lot to do with the fact that we are so attached to our computers and our devices, and we don't get the breaks that we used to get.
Mhm.
Is there a correlation there?
There's definitely a correlation, especially in younger people with adults, with social media and just the flood of
Yeah.
information constantly coming at us. There's also the fact that we live in a society that promotes hustle, that promotes constant going.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, as career women, we work all day. And for those of us who have kids, we may get a quick, healthy meal in, or we may eat on the run while we're off to the kids' sports or the next event, right?
Yeah.
And so we never get that opportunity to truly pause and really ground ourselves. And when our kids are growing up, they're growing up with this constant stimulation and constant go, go, go. And I think we lose sight of the need for that genuine connection when we're connected with other people, really genuinely, really pausing to have a conversation, look each other in the eyes, not conversing like while cooking dinner. Those times are important, but we also need those times where we're actually acknowledging the person that we're speaking to, where we're actually showing them that they matter, that they count, that what they're saying is important to us, and coming from a loving place of pause for
Mhm.
both them and for us. So yes, I think devices, I think constantly being connected and not disconnecting, really pausing from all of the noise
Yeah.
does elevate the anxiety levels.
Yeah.
Not to mention just the fact that we have access to so much information at our fingertips. And how many times do you look at your or turn on the news or the television or whatever, the radio, and there's something catastrophic or there's, somebody saying something bad about someone else.
Yeah.
All of those things drive negative thoughts, drive negative emotions and anxiety. It stimulates fear, which is basically what anxiety is. Anxiety is an abnormal apprehension or fear of something, a situation, a circumstance, an interaction that you don't know that you're going to have the capability of handling. So when you think of that and you think of all of this information coming at us so quickly, 24/7, and not resting and letting our endorphins, the neurotoxins in our body, actually have that time away from the blue light and just have the sunlight and nature and the gift of pause, that just elevates all of those apprehensions, all
Yeah.
of the anxiety, and we don't get a break. So our nervous
Yeah.
system is just constantly firing instead of being able to
Yeah.
relax and breathe.
That makes perfect sense. Now, you pivoted from a doctorate in pharmacy to coaching,
Hmm.
speaking, podcasting, and even writing. What did that leap teach you about trusting yourself to pursue new dreams?
Donna, I believe that every single one of us has everything inside of us that we need to achieve. If there's a calling on our heart, God's going to equip us. And I don't know how many of your listeners are faith based, but that's been an integral part of my life. And so when I look at things like, okay, if I really feel this pull to something, if I'm being called to something, I know that those resources are going to be provided for me to be able to do whatever it is. And there have been so many times I made mistakes. And honestly, from an anxiety perspective, it held me back a lot. I used to have a terrible fear of public speaking. But here is the thing, when we find something we're passionate about, when we are an expert at something, it becomes really easy to believe that you can share a message and to get out and speak confidently. Do I still get nervous? Yes, absolutely. Do I have a little bit of anxiety? Yes, I do. But that fuels me for more positive energy versus holding me back from
Yeah.
doing it now. And so I think there are so many lessons I've learned, but when it comes to that trust, simply when we do it, we may make a mistake, but we'll learn from that mistake. But then when we do it right, we build our confidence, and that confidence leads to trust.
Your purpose to results method, it helps families create thriving experiences. What's one key principle we can all apply, even if we're just starting out? Hmm.
So when I think of purpose, I think of looking at our values, our visions, and our passions, which as adults, we often lose sight of what our passions are because we're so busy and we are so distracted. And we are in a world that is basically telling us what we need to do to get to the next level or to achieve or to accomplish whatever it is that we're being instructed to accomplish, being it in corporate or in business, whatever it is. But the other thing that is so critical is looking at our values. When we make decisions that are not aligned with our values, we tend to falter and we're not going to get the results we want. Why? Because we're not aligned with our desires. We're setting goals that aren't feasible for us or aren't aligned with our values, which are at the core of who we are. So when those things are off, our purpose is not going to lead to results. So it's really important to look at the full picture there and to really align ourselves with our values to be able to achieve results.
You know, a way it's a little different, but right after I had my first son, I was at a dinner party. I was talking to a woman, and she gave me the most amazing advice. And she said to me, Donna, the one thing you need to concentrate on is instilling your values in your son at an early age. And if you don't, society will. And it was something that stopped me. I never would have thought of that. And then she said, and you don't have a lot of time. She said, by the time he's 9, 10, it's formed. It's too late. My son is now 11. And I have taken, that her wisdom to heart. And it's something that I've done throughout his life. I've always sat him down and said, these are our values as a family. This is what we believe in. This is what we know good and true. And this is how we work towards it. And I will tell you, I truly believe that was life-changing.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. And I think it's also important to allow our children to discover their own values.
Mhm.
When they go out into the world, they're going to choose their own
Yeah.
values, right? And the more exposure they have to other people and just life events
Yeah.
to develop their own values. But many people, I talk about this in my book because many kids don't recognize values. And so when we live aligned with our values, it can transform in so many positive ways versus making decisions that aren't aligned,
Yeah.
following the crowd, so to speak, and then regretting that and living
Mm.
with shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And I think as women, we have done this quite often where we've followed what society is telling
Yeah.
us to do. So it's really important because at the end of the day, if we're not aligned with our values and if we're not teaching our children the values that are important to
Yeah.
us, then we're not communicating effectively as a family. And that's where you have more emotional chaos and more anxiety arise.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
you spoke of it slightly before. You mentioned your faith has guided you. How has it helped you stay grounded while pursuing big dreams?
Mm. So, really, truly, that is like the core of who I am. And just knowing at the end of the day that I'm not in any of this alone, that I have a power source outside of myself to guide me and lead me and support me. And then just knowing scripture verses that I can fall back on when I'm feeling anxious or when I'm feeling stressed or when I don't know the answer to a question. Just having that ability to pray and allowing the Holy Spirit to kind of bring me that guidance, that just has always been a huge bonus. And it's funny because what I've seen happen, especially, I don't always, it depends on the client. Faith isn't always a part of our coaching together, whatever. But I always ask for guidance at the start of my day. And it's amazing sometimes how when a client is struggling with something and then the right question or the right brainstorming for, a solution comes up and it's like, wow, how did I know that? I didn't really
Mm.
have that information within me at the onset of this conversation.
Mhm.
So I just feel like there's always that sense of guidance that I can lean into. And that's really grounded me in terms of aligning with my
Mm.
values, right?
Yeah.
Staying in tune with what I know is right. And then guiding from that place of from the heart and soul versus from what society is saying or what some other methodology might be saying.
You've already dreamed big and accomplished so much. What's one big dream that you're chasing next?
So the big dream that I'm chasing next is to take the two books that I have, the teen book and the parent book, and extrapolate them to a children's book, a book for young men, and then a book for women in general.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
So yeah.
For anyone listening today who is struggling with anxiety or feeling stuck, what's one small step they can take this week to begin moving forward?
Start a gratitude practice if you don't have one. Because when we are grateful, we cannot be anxious at the same time. Our brains cannot work that way. Our nervous system
Mhm.
cannot work that way. So take that step to start regulating your nervous system. So when you're in a situation and things may seem rough, seem hard, seem challenging, and like you're just not getting anywhere, make a list of the things you're grateful for and then get really curious, because when you're curious, you're not going to feel fear. And so get curious as to what that goal is, why you want to achieve that goal, what the next best step is for that specific goal, and then ask yourself what you need to be able to accomplish that. And then, is it a feasible goal for you? And do you truly desire that goal, or is this a goal that society has put on you? Get out and explore, take walks, do something that gives you joy. Maybe it's art, maybe it's music. Do something that gives you joy, because anything from the past that you've felt shame or guilt over, you will not feel when you're feeling joy. So that's what I would say. Just remember those three words: gratitude, curiosity, and joy.
Love it. I love it so much. Robyn, thank you for sharing your heart and your wisdom with us today. Where can listeners learn more about you and your work?
The best place is my website, therobyngraham.com, because there you can access the book, the podcast, and any other information you want to know about me, as well as free resources on how to navigate anxiety.
Thank you. If today's episode resonated with you, remember, big dreams are possible, even when the road feels uncertain. You've got this. Thank you for joining me today. Bye-bye.